I had something interesting happen yesterday. We were at a mountain village, a tea village, and I was in someone's house sharing the gospel, and this woman came walking by, and she looked in the door and she saw me, and her eyes got all wide, and she she started pointing at me. She dropped her bag, and she said something, and my interpreter looks at me. She says that last night she dreamed about you and that you would come and bring her a message. And so I shared the gospel with her. Obviously God was doing something there, but she wouldn't accept. We talked and talked and talked about it, and yet she had a struggle believing that Jesus had come from God, that he didn't have an earthly father, that his father was God in heaven. And she couldn't believe that no man was involved in the creation of Jesus. And so it's so interesting that she would believe this kind of supernatural experience in her dream, and then to see me right there, but then she wouldn't accept the message. And to me, it's just, such a picture of the stubbornness of us as people, that we so often want to look for superstitious things, but then when something really comes from God, we're so skeptical that we can't believe it or won't follow through with it. And so that was just an interesting experience. I've had several interesting experiences, actually, because there's a couple that really stand out. One that really stands out to me was a few days ago. We were doing door-to-doors in a village, and I go to this house, and there's a crippled man there. Half of his body is lame. He couldn't use his hand or his foot on his right side, and so he was excited to see me. I came in and I started talking to him a little bit, and I told him we were here to share good news and all of this, and I shared the gospel, the story of Jesus, of the fall of man, then God loves us so much that he would redeem us, all of this. And he says, I've heard this story before. And I was like, really? And he said, yes. And apparently there is a Pentecostal charismatic church that had come in and started a mission there in the town. And what they did was they came, and because he was lame, they brought him to the church because they wanted him to be healed. And so they brought him for a while, and he's like, I heard this message is a good message. He's like, but I didn't get healed, so they didn't want me to come to their church anymore. And what I gathered that had happened was these people, were praying for his healing, and when he wasn't healed, then he didn't have enough faith, or he was setting a bad example to others, and so they quit bringing him to church. They just abandoned him at his house. And I told him, the message is a good message, that God can heal, but that he doesn't always, that many times our life is difficult. And I shared with him about heaven, that in heaven that we'll all be made well, but this doesn't mean that we're made well immediately here on earth. Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. And so after I shared the message with him that God didn't promise to heal him physically, he promised to heal him spiritually, and that he needed to accept that message for himself. And God may choose to heal him someday, or he might not. That's up to God, and we just have to trust God. And so he sat there and he thought for a while, and then he looked at me and he started crying, and he says, I think that you've come to India just to see me, just to tell me this message. And he truly believed then in the message of Jesus. It wasn't about circumstance, it wasn't about what was going on in his physical life, but it was about the truth of the gospel saving your soul. And the other stuff follows. So that was very memorable and meaningful. A few days back we went to another village where we did a kids camp. I guess it's been about a week ago now, and there was a man on the side of the road and by the railroad tracks, and he just looked terrible. And so when we were done with the children's camp, I went to him and shared the gospel with him. I had just talked to him about the gospel, and he couldn't breathe. I mean, he was very sick. I imagine he's probably dead by now. It's been a week. He looked that bad. He seemed that bad that he was on his last legs, as it were. And I was talking about I told him that God saw him and loved him right now, even as he was. He knew all of his life and all of this, and so he started gasping because he didn't have any air, because his lungs were just filled with some kind of liquid, tuberculosis or something, and so he says something, and the interpreter says he's all alone. He says he's all alone. He just keeps repeating, he's all alone, he's all alone. And so I was able to share with him how he could not be alone anymore, that God loved him and wanted a relationship to be his friend. And so this, is very meaningful to me as well, because that was a difficult situation. Here the guy is probably about to die, a deathbed experience, and we were able to give him a little bit of money, give him a Bible, those kind of things, gave him some water to drink, but that's about the extent of what we could do for him. And so, we hope that he truly believes and truly can then find a friend, so that he's not alone anymore. So those are just a couple of experiences I know some of the other guys, have had when they're sharing the gospel. And I know Van was sharing with someone, and as he talked about the crucifixion, the woman began to cry. She was so sincerely enthralled in the story of Jesus, who would love her, that when he died, it was sad to her. She felt an emotional loss from his death, and so she believed. And John was able to share with a high priest of one of the Hindu temples, and John really laid it out. You're serving a false god. You're bringing other people this false god, and you have to change your life, and all this other. And the guy was overjoyed at a message of hope. Here's the guy who's supposed to be in charge, and he has no hope himself. And so when he hears the message of hope and love and freedom, then it changes his life. So we're getting ready to head to the market now, and so that's all for now.